President Trump says House Republicans must pass the Save America Act as it remains held up in the Senate. He says it should be their main focus heading into the midterms. Joining us for more on this is Mike Leon, host of Can We Please Talk podcast and director of strategy at the Free and Equal Elections Foundation. And we have Tony Kinnett, national correspondent for the Daily Signal and host of the Tony Kinnett Cast radio show and podcast. Okay. Good afternoon to you both. Mike, I'll start with you today. I have a clip here of President Trump talking about the Save America Act. Let's just take a quick look.
It's very simple. All voters must show the act, voter ID. Ready? This is not complicated. Voter identification. Now, I have a whole list, but I don't want to put. I have like hundreds of things on the list. If you go shopping, if you do this, if you buy a car, if you license a car, if you point to everything you need to have identification. So all voters have to show identification, ID. All voters must show proof of citizenship in order to vote. So you have ID and you have citizenship. So far, good.
Mike, he said this yesterday. Your reaction?
Yeah, he's right. We already do all of that stuff. Good afternoon, guys. He's right. Earlier today, I was registering for something down here in the state of Florida. Guess what I had to show? I had to show my ID. I got my voter election card in the mail. It has my precinct on it. Guess what I have to do when I go to the precinct? I already show my ID. These are things we already do, guys. This is not rocket science. So the fact that the president outlined like 5 or 6 examples there, like when you go to buy a car, which is true. I just recently purchased a car a couple years ago. Yeah, you got to show your ID when you're signing all the paperwork. It's the same thing. Now, is it universal across states? No. Some states require on the day that you go to the precinct to actually bring your ID. Other states have already verified you through other methods, whether it be the DMV, et cetera, when you go to register to vote. Like where I'm moving back to New York. In New York, we do that right now, right? You register to vote at the DMV. And so when you go to the precinct, they already have your information there because you've already showed ID at the first place. These are things that we already do. The fact that the president is focusing on this act and blocking other pieces of legislation, potentially, he said, to potentially go through the rest of the legislature. I don't know if that's the smartest thing. I'll leave to Tony to decide that. But I think Thune is right. And if I can just quote Mitch McConnell from back in 2017, we can't let the radical part of the base overtake, this nuclear option of vandalizing the Senate. I'm paraphrasing a little bit of what he said. Those words were in 2017. I think he's right on the money still here. And I think John Thune is taking the right position on this because he knows he doesn't have the votes for this.
Okay, Tony, a lot there. Your response, do we already do voter ID for elections?
I mean, unfortunately, no. And I point to Minnesota as the example here. And of course, a good afternoon to you both. Hope it's not as stormy there as it is here. And in regard to this voter ID situation in Minnesota, you can vouch for up to 7 people. You show up to the polls and you say, oh, yeah, these 7 people, they're who they say they are. That's wrong. That's not a good thing. Also in Wisconsin, all the way out to California, you can get a driver's license, which allows you to register to vote, even if you're not a citizen of the United States. Now, again, hopefully they catch you. We've seen in cases over the last 10 years that they haven't. And those particular things are one of the reasons why that Americans, from Democrats to Republicans, support voter ID measures like the rest of the free world. And so it's important here that, yeah, while many are currently saying it's going to be the boon to women, poor married women, they could never figure out how to prove that they changed their name. Oh, no one's ever done that before. That kind of fear mongering is silly. I think that Thune saying that he doesn't want to mess with the filibuster here, the arguments that he's put against it are rather weird, saying it's an influence campaign. Not this one. I'm afraid there are a lot of congressmen on the Senate and the House side that are pushing for this. But as for the filibuster itself, well, sure, I'd love the filibuster to be in place, but as soon as the Democrats take control of the Senate, they're nuking the filibuster as it is. They have promised to do so. So at this point, if this is the key legislation that Americans vastly support, Jim Banks made this case to me yesterday on our show that this is the point and reason of actually moving this forward. And given that this is something Americans do want, not saying, oh, we're actually going to focus on housing or, oh, we're actually going to focus on the shutdown, 2 very important things. Getting this passed through first right away makes sense based on how Americans feel about it.
Okay, Mike, like you said, not all states require voter ID, but do you think Democrats would break party lines to push it over the finish line? Do you think this could happen?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think so, but I also think that there are parts of it that people agree with, right? And I've said this before on the show, and we'll talk about this probably in a second. But like, if you look at some of the pieces of legislation that some Democrats have introduced, it's about certain areas that they agree with the president on, and then certain areas that they want more discussion on. Just look at Rosa DeLauro, who recently introduced something to keep TSA and FEMA and parts of DHS open, versus let's continue to have a conversation about ICE and CBP funding, given the events that have happened in Minnesota, to Tony's point. So if you take that in isolation, I don't think the Vote Save America's Act or Save America's Vote Act, I don't know what it's being called this week, but I don't think that is the piece of legislation that the president should be focused on. Unfortunately, right now, we've started a war in the Middle East with Iran. Gas prices are high. There are other things that are happening, not only economically, but things that are being introduced legislatively from both chambers that we should be a little bit more focused on versus this. And again, he gave a litany of examples of things we already do. And this is not my data, guys. Go to the Heritage Foundation, go to the Brookings.edu, go to these foundations that have all done assessments about voter election fraud and data that has happened throughout the last 10, 20 years. The cases are in the 0.00008%. Those are very low. There's a lot of O's in front of it, guys. And it's because of this. Now, does it absolve it? Of course not. But like I've said before, there's running into the kicker and there's roughing the kicker in the NFL. The penalties are the same, but one's way more egregious. And right now, this is very running into the kicker with respect to legislation that the president thinks that this is something on his side, when we've got 75% of people don't support the war in Iran and boots on the ground, and 60% of people saying Congress should have had the ability to chime in with respect to what they have control over, the purse strings of how we conduct a war operation. So we've got bigger fish to fry, and I think the president is focusing on the wrong thing with respect to this issue.
Okay, Tony, your response, and how do you feel about Trump saying he won't sign any other legislation until this one?
Well, I mean, again, I think this is a very simple win, given the piece of legislation, the data that we've already outlined here in this segment. Again, that there are states that give driver's licenses to those who are not citizens of the United States, but still consider a driver's license to be appropriate identification in order to vote. Of course, when we've looked, of course, at Minnesota, which allows you to vouch for up to 7-8 people when you go to vote, those are problems. Those are clear holes. Just because there's a small number of cases doesn't mean murder's totally fine. That's not how we do law. Additionally, when we're talking about things the president should focus on, yeah, I mean, I'm perfectly comfortable talking about Iran and talking about the security threats. I personally wouldn't have shut down Department of Homeland Security amid 2 Islamic terror incidents, throwing 2 IEDs packed with shrapnel in New York City, or, of course, down in Texas, the property of Allah sweatshirt guy. I mean, I wouldn't have shut down DHS. That sounds like a morally abhorrent thing to do because you want to posture and preen over ICE. I mean, that's the kind of hill that the Democrats have chosen to stake American safety and security on. It seems like the one thing that we really want TSA to do, they're not able to do. And Rosa DeLauro can get out there when she's not doing dancing videos and talk about how important it is to separate the funding out. But we don't do that. We don't isolate tiny little bits of funding so that people can throw fits over whether or not they want certain parts of the government funded. No, you fund the government fully because it is ridiculous to put the safety of America at stake because you're really, really grumpy that Tom Homan or Kristi Noem or maybe Mark Wayne Mullinahead didn't say the right words about people who are in the country illegally. It's irresponsible.
Okay, Mike, let me ask you this. President Trump has urged Senate Majority Leader John Thune to impose the talking filibuster rule to pass the bill. What do you think here? Thune is saying that using this rule is going to take up a lot of time, Senate floor time. I mean, do you think he has a choice here to go against President Trump?
Well, let's find out. I mean, that's the beauty of all of this, right? I think this is another thing that when you talk about things in a rudimentary level, like this is one of the things that a lot of people don't know the nuanced differences between these two. And I think John Thune is playing the numbers game, and he, like me, I would hope, is understanding that there are other things from a legislative perspective that need to get done. And this is something that I don't have the numbers right now. So why stop everything dead in its tracks? We already have passed the lowest amount of bills, or set to pass the lowest amount of bills since the previous iteration of Congress prior. So why would we want to do all of that and hold all of this up when I don't have the numbers here. Just barely passed in the House. And as we were talking about before, there are parts of it that Thune has said we could try to get passed versus actually trying to just force this whole bill in when we don't have the actual numbers. And I want to go back to something Tony said. Democrats would never nuke the filibuster because they're wussies. And if they did, they would have years ago. But Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin decided not to. And Chuck Schumer is inept. And Hakeem Jeffries is inept. So they're wussies, and they're never going to do it. See, Republicans actually do it, the thing that they're going to do, whether it's, talk about DEI, CRT, all these other things, they actually do it. Democrats will talk, and they'll talk above your head, and then they'll never actually do it. And that's the frustration that I've heard from Democrats all
come on,
throughout
Mike.
life.
Come on.
It's true.
Don't
if they would have done it, Tony,
you know it's
Tony,
wrong.
if they would have done it,
you're saying
Tony, if they would have done it, they would have done it already. They would have done it when they controlled the levers of Congress, and they didn't. You know why?
But they
again,
did, and they had two Democrats who defected. They did do it. They had two Democrats who defected, and Republicans have senators on the moderate side.
If they did do it, why isn't Thune passing it?
Mitch McConnell.
If they did do it, why isn't Thune?
All right.
Okay,
so we can move on from whether Democrats will do this or not.
I don't want to make this into a YouTube video where my thumbnail is popping up on Daily Signal's face. But if they had the numbers already and the filibuster was nuked, they would have done this already. So they clearly didn't do it. Like it's not a Mike Leon thing. This is like an actual thing. Like he doesn't have the numbers. The filibuster's still in place. Like they never did it because Democrats again are wussies. They don't stand up for their constituents.
They have moderates who break away, like Jared Golden over in the House.
All right.
You have moderates who break away. Both parties do. It's
okay, so Mike is convinced. Mike is convinced Democrats will do it. Tony is convinced that Democrats won't do it. We'll just leave it there. We'll move on from this point.
Yeah.
Right. Reverse. Sorry. Okay, Tony, let me ask you this. How do you feel about Ken Paxton saying he's going to drop out of the race if Senate leadership agrees to lift the filibuster and pass the Save America Act?
I actually had pitched kind of a slight tweak on the idea. I thought that Trump should go over to Thune, who once Cornyn endorsed, and said, look, you want me to endorse Cornyn, you need to bring forward the Save America Act for a talking filibuster, which, yes, would take a very long time, lots of procedure, but it would force Cory Booker to get out and yell for 48 hours on the floor of the Senate. Or in this case, nuking the filibuster entirely, which, again, we'd have to see if Mitch McConnell, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski would go in that favor. I thought Trump might float the idea. Instead, we actually had Paxton float the idea instead, which is an interesting move because it's an admission from Paxton that he's probably not as safe a bet against Tallarico, although with the videos coming out about Tallarico being exactly like every other fake moderate, it's those chances are starting to sink rather precipitously. Again, whether it's Cornyn or Paxton, it's really bizarre to see Paxton recognize he has baggage, maybe in kind of the same way Tony Gonzalez did against Brandon Herrera in the GOP House primary in Texas. I think that it was a good idea to float. But if you have that kind of consciousness to say, oh, wait a minute, I maybe don't have what it takes to win the Senate election in a tight Texas run.
All right. Okay. So we have to leave it there because the White House press secretary is holding a press briefing right now. We have to tune into that. Thank you both for coming on today.
Thanks, guys.